Here's that beautiful field again. Very different greens this morning, but nice, and nice shadow shapes across the grasses. Nice little horizontal lines. And this is directly opposite the grove of trees. I could just set up and paint here and flip around and paint landscapes of, I think, my two favorite places to possibly paint close to my home. I'm wondering if maybe the shadow work I've been doing over the last year is really starting to show results. What's on my mind is how grateful I am, and I hesitate to use the word grateful. It's the perfect word, but when a word starts to be used so much, and it starts to be part of what I think of as trends, I often avoid using the word. And gratitude and grateful are words that for quite a number of years now, I just feel are overused. They're overused as part of personal growth and social media. I had to change the battery on the camera. So going back to the idea of gratitude, not the idea of gratitude, the word gratitude, it just feels like that's part of the personal growth activities that have become popular. To start the day with gratitude, to be grateful for this, be grateful for that. And quite honestly, it's all true, and it works really well. I just realized that I wish I had a different word. But since I don't, I'll use the word gratitude. So this morning, I'm feeling extremely grateful for Jill and Suzanne and Carol, who are the three members of the artist community, the artist journey community, that meet with me every Monday in art book club, sketchbook story time. And it's through our trust in one another, our openness, and our support for one another, for whatever direction any one of us happens to be going, that has built a safe place to become more of the artists that each one of us is. And I'm seeing that the last couple of days, when I've spent most of my time in the studio, which has been wonderful, at the expense of everything else, because I forget everything else while I'm in the studio. And I have gone back and reworked two of the pieces that were part of my pack series that I thought were complete. Fortunately, a good portion of my pack series did survive the flood. They got a little wet, a little warped, but they were on wood panels. So I was able to treat them to prevent mold, I hope. Anyway, so I went back to just kind of play with two of the pieces. Here comes a car. And the reason I did that is because I'd been inspired to go back and use my jelly plate again with botanicals, with some leaves I collected from my yard. And I was inspired to do this because of the work that Jill has been doing. She's been sharing what she's been doing. We've been watching her experiments and seeing what she does with them. And I think we've all been inspired to try some of the things that she's discovered. So I made a series of prints, jelly prints, and I liked the results. I didn't want to put them together in a zigzag book the way that Jill had, because that was what Jill was doing. And I felt that I wanted to incorporate my prints into something that I was already doing, to tie together. I'm trying desperately to tie together fragments of the different work, the different phases I've gone through over the many decades of my life as an artist. So I wanted to see, since I'd printed on wet strength tissue, which, except for what's printed on it, vanishes when you glue it down to a surface. So you see through, it becomes transparent in the areas that haven't been printed. So I'm looking through my pack series, because that's really all I have left to rework, or anything else. I saw that many of my panels from the series that started because of my afternoon in Parc André Citron, that even though I had considered them complete, they looked some of them looked so chaotic and busy and unresolved, and I was like, oh wow, I can't believe I thought that these were finished. So I pulled one out, and next thing I knew, it was hours and hours later, I'd completely transformed it, and it once again felt much more like a mirror of the artist I am. So I put it aside. I thought maybe I had more to do on it. I thought maybe it was still asking questions, although it had become silent. I get stones caught in my foot, my shoe. But in the morning, when I looked at it, it reminded me, or it called to mind, the quilts that my grandmother used to make from old wool coats and wool clothing. And I mean, she would recycle everything into very strange gifts for us for Christmas. The weirdest gift was the shoe bags. But anyway, I felt that the painting was definitely of my life, of many aspects of my life. And the prints, which were made from plants from my yard, and were also of the really wonderful, deep friendship that has grown between Jill and me over the many years that I've been going to Wales. I mean, it just, I didn't care whether it was resolved or not. I wanted the painting, the actual painting, to stop at that point, to be that trigger. Here comes another car. I wanted the painting to be that trigger for my thoughts, for my memories, for my connections with the person I've been and possibly the person that I'm becoming. I'm not just the artist I am and am becoming, but the person. And so I decided to cold wax it, which is the way that I had intended on sealing my pack series. I take cold wax. I have the Durland cold wax that I'm still working through. And originally I got it to seal large watercolors, but more recently I've been using it for oil and cold wax, acrylic and cold wax. I've been using it for my mixed media work. But the way I seal it is I put a very thin coat, rub a very, very thin coat carefully over the entire surface, and I let it sit or cure for a couple of days, and then I buff it with a real leather chamois cloth. So I went ahead and sealed it, and I thought, wow, that says something. I guess that is really done for whatever, good or bad. And then yesterday I went back to the studio, and once again I started playing around with some of the other jelly prints I'd made with another board from my pack series. And this one was very chaotic. Now, the first one that I did, that I'd done the day before, I actually had really liked at one point. And I was rather surprised that I was so willing to change it completely. But one of the good aspects of the flood is that I'm even less attached to my work than the finished work, or supposedly finished work, than it was before the flood. It's like, so what? It could have been wrecked in the flood. So why not give it a try? Let's see what happens. Who cares? I could have another flood and it could get destroyed too, so I might as well learn something while I can from it. So the second one, I can't really remember, because when I go into that zone in the studio, it's really hard to recall what my thoughts are and what I'm doing and where I'm going with it. I just don't know, which is why I so often take photos along the way to document it for myself, so that I can look back and see what it was I did. Well, some of the most important changes in yesterday's transformation were not documented, which I think was good. There's a toss-up between stopping and snapping a photo and just staying totally in that flow. So this morning I fixed my coffee and thought, I'll just go down and sit with that painting and see what it's saying to me, see if it's asking me any questions. So I did. And it, wow. It's quite an experience. I really don't have words to describe how I felt. And that's when the gratitude, the feeling of gratitude, poured into me, because without having been inspired, encouraged by people, by Suzanne and Carol and Jill, in this gathering that we have every Monday, this transformation wouldn't have happened. A different transformation would have, but not the one that I was so full of this morning. And Carol had talked about the neuro art that she was doing, and I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed neuro art. And I had decided to try it with the connect the dots, which I did. And I think by doing that, it brought me closer to that bridge of really being connected and trusting what I'm experiencing inside, and shifting in the studio from working from the brain and everything I've learned about creating art over the decades, and allowing myself to work freely the way that I did in Tuscany under the influence of the Blue Lady of Verrocchio. And I say that because I'm just laughing at myself about it. And I called in the the influence of the Blue Lady and the influence of being in the park each of the times that I began work in the studio over the last couple of days. But without that element of community, without that element of discussion between artists, I don't think it would have happened. I think it was the extra ingredient, that spice that changes an ordinary dish, a goulash, into something magnificent that could be served at a 5-star restaurant. So, yes, I am grateful to Suzanne and Carol and Jill, and for our ability to meet together. Jill is in Wales. Suzanne is in Luxembourg or France. It depends on where she is at the time and in what she's doing right now. Carol, who's up in Vermont. And I was in New Jersey. And we meet. We look forward to it. It's our favorite night of the week, or night for them, afternoon for me. And for Carol, it's the afternoon. And I think back on the artists of St. Ives throughout time, but earlier, a couple of decades ago, I've been reading again about Terry Frost. And those St. Ives artists have really been a strong influence in my work, in my attitude, and my thoughts over the past couple of years. And without that community, a lot of the work wouldn't have evolved the way that it does. Liz Mitchell has influenced me greatly through the bookmaking that she has done, and through her conceptual art. Dina West, huge influence, just in the way she thinks, and the way that she presents and exhibits. Not for selling and marketing, but for exhibiting within a concept among a group of artists that Movis, that the attachment community there has grown over the years. Okay, taking a break, coming up to a neighbor with 2 dogs. I hope I made something clear with what I was talking about, because the conversation with my neighbor has shifted my attention, and I can't go back to whatever it was I was talking about. I was talking about community, and talking to my neighbors is an important part of community. Especially, I like meeting up with neighbors while we're out walking, much more than social gatherings where everybody's kind of sitting chatting. I'm rounding one of the last corners toward home, and I'm already excited about seeing how these 2 last transformations of pieces in the Pack series look when viewed with the 2, possibly 3 pieces of the Pack series that I felt the most attached to before. And those 2, even if they start asking me questions, I will wax, I will seal, because they are truly an important window into my own evolution. The 2 that I worked on over the last 2 days, I do realize and I remember that I ended up resolving them, or thinking they were resolved. And it wasn't that they clearly expressed a connection with me. I look back, kind of remembering when I was working diligently on the whole series, that I was trying to accomplish something. I was trying to complete things. I was trying to do the series of 100 Pack paintings to move on to another series, instead of sitting with the series and letting the series become itself. So anyway, thank you so much, Jill, Suzanne, and Carol. I look forward to seeing you next Monday.